Bullying isn't always loud and forceful, and bullies are not always people who knock you down and take your stuff by force. This is something that I learned recently listening to Dr. John Deloney, and it helped me understand a lot of different things that have happened in my life, so I thought it was worth sharing with a little bit of an anecdote. Today's post is called Bullies Aren't Always Loud, and the headline is Silence or Perpetual Bad Moods Can Be Bullying Too. Introverts can be bullies, people can bully with quietness, people can bully without violence. The truth is, I define a bully as anyone who must be lived around rather than lived with. What I mean by that is, if there's someone who is in your life and you just are afraid to say certain things because you know how they are, they're going to just fly off the handle, or they're just going to be a wet blanket for the rest of the day or the rest of the week, or they're going to make things miserable just because you disagreed with them. That's living around someone rather than living with them and creating compromise. Anyone who isn't interested in compromise and must have their way, regardless of the happiness of the people around them, is a bully, period. Even if they don't yell and force their way through things. Bullies can be quiet too, and I actually think that in our culture, this might be the more common way of bullying. A few years ago, I had a roommate who never yelled, never slammed doors, or never shouted us down during disagreements. He never tried to take anything by force, but instead, whenever he didn't get his way about something in the house, he would just sink into a heavy, tense silence and just cover every interaction for the rest of the day in just a big, wet blanket. His energy just... And every time you interacted with him, it would just be one-word answers, and he'd be tense, and it'd just be like, meh. To make things worse, he'd been in so much therapy. He'd been in decades of therapy in his life. So he could talk circles around like how we weren't displaying emotional intelligence or holding space for him when we didn't do what he wanted. He knew all the words, but he had never internalized any of the substance of what he had learned in therapy, which meant that the atmosphere in our house became unbearable anytime he wasn't catered to. And he just was self-aware about why he was annoying, but hadn't done any personal growth. So he just turned into a bully with different vocabulary. Thankfully, he was easy to ignore most of the time and was annoying, not abusive. But my heart goes out to anyone in a much worse situation, and I want you to know their behavior is not okay and that you're right to feel uncomfortable. I hope that you don't feel stuck, and I hope that you know that people worthy of your time and attention would want to compromise with you. Because if you're a healthy person who loves the people in your life, compromise actually feels better than getting your way. It makes your relationship so much more fun and fulfilling. And anyone who always gets their way doesn't respect the people in their life, doesn't respect themselves, and isn't worthy of respect, which is such a sad, horrible way to live. But it's the truth, and it's important to remember. Bullying isn't always about volume or violence. It's a refusal to compromise on anything. If life always has to bend to someone in your life, or else, you're living with a bully. Anyone who must be lived around rather than lived with is a bully and is not worthy of respect, which, to be very clear, does not mean they're unredeemable, just unworthy of respect with their current attitudes and actions. People who are deserving of respect want the people they love to be happy, even if they don't always get their way. And I hope and pray that you find those people in your life. And I really hope that if you're in a situation with someone who is just uninterested in compromise and just completely covers every situation in which they don't get their way with just a giant gray cloud, that you either help them work through that attitude or find better people. That is it for the Modern Myth Maker this week, and thank you for tuning in.